quite a challenge. However, I'm an engineer, and I don't believe that there's anything that we can't do, given enough expertise and determination. However, marine energy isn't a new idea. As far as I'm concerned, the serious thought started in the 1970s, and it seemed to emerge simultaneously in 3 different locations in Europe. Edinburgh, Professor Stephen Salter, who was my PhD supervisor. There he is there, looking much, much younger than he does now. At Lisbon, Professor Falcao, and up in Trondheim, Professor Johannes Faldes, all seemed to emerge simultaneously at some point in the first half of the 70s, with this idea that perhaps the waves around Western Europe could contribute to the energy that we're drawing from. And at that time, Edinburgh University made the capital investment of building this facility here, the wide wave tank. This was intended to allow us to perform model testing at 100th scale that was totally representative of the North Atlantic. This was, as far as we're concerned, the world's first totally controllable multi-directional wave tank. It was specifically built for wave power. University are very excited about this, and here it is in the front page of the University of Edinburgh Bulletin, October 1974, and Stephen here pointing to a very early model of his device, the Edinburgh duck. We tend to call it the Salter duck, but he gets very cross when we call it that. He's a very modest man, essentially. Move forward into the 1980s. Towards the end of the 1970s, the UK government got excited about it, and they invested substantially in a research programme through the then Department of Energy to develop a 3 gigawatt power station off the west coast of Scotland. 3 gigawatt, that's 2 dirty great big nuclear power stations. What an ambition that was, totally unrealistic at the time, and in fact totally unrealistic at the moment. None of us are thinking as big as that. We're now thinking we're doing quite well if we can get to 2 gigawatts in total by the end of this decade, and even that we think is quite a substantial challenge. And Mrs. Thatcher, of course, was Prime Minister at the time, and she wasn't keen on this idea. She liked North Sea gas in particular, especially as it would put the miners out of business. And on the 19th of March 1982, she got a big red pen through the WAVE programme. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. I know it was that time because I had my 1-year progress interview, my PhD, at 4 o'clock, and that was the first question I was asked. Man looked at his watch and he said, 90 minutes ago the government ended wave power, what are you going to do with your PhD? So I remember that vividly. There were some very determined people who refused to stop. There was a considerable amount of unfunded research went on in the UK. Much of it at Queen's University Belfast. My good friend and colleague Trevor Whitaker just said no. And he said, I'm going to keep this going. And he raked together funds to keep the effort going. We should all be very grateful to Trevor for the effort that he put into that. So much so that he got his first device installed in 1990 in the face of opposition from the British government, it has to be said. Move forward into the 1990s. There we've got Trevor's wave power device that was installed in 1990, the Queen's University device. That was tested almost to destruction to prove that this kind of technology could operate. It wasn't just wave power now, however. We started to see the first development of technology like this. This is the Loch Linney turbine that was installed by Peter Frankel, then of IT Power Limited. He now holds an honorary position at the University of Edinburgh. He wanted to show that the tides could generate electricity for our purposes. Also a successful project. These were demonstration projects, proof of concept, to show that it can be done, not to generate commercial quantities of electricity. Within the 1990s, we started to see renewed interest. Government started to get interested again. We started to see the first stage of new public and private funding. And we started to get commercial companies involved in the development of this technology, and that was very, very significant. Into the last decade, it all opens up. There's now new formal funding mechanisms for research and development. not just research and development, but the development of the technology itself to support companies to develop technology commercially. We now have an organisation, the European Marine Energy Centre. That's the logo there. I'm actually on the board of EMEC, very proud of that. I'll say a bit more about EMEC later. But the purpose of EMEC is to support the testing of commercial scale devices. Not commercial devices. These are not intended to make a profit for their developers, but they are devices of the form and size that we believe that commercial development will follow. We think of the 2000s as being the new dawn. In Edinburgh, the new dawn let us build this. You saw the old photograph of the wine tank at Edinburgh. The university in its wisdom, about the year 2000, just as the money was about to come back on stream, decided to put a bulldozer through our wave tank, and we were left with something like a third of the space to try and do the same work in. So this is our new tank, the curved tank. It's a rather unusual shape. I'll see why it is that shape later. There's Stephen, much, much older, a bit less hair, a bit greyer now, but still very dynamic, and still very much the father figure of wave power in Edinburgh, and indeed, I would say, Europe. Now, why are we interested in this? Why do we think wave power is going to be significant? Well, geography has been quite good to us. There we are here. Out here we've got the North Atlantic, a huge fetch over which the southwesterlies blow and concentrate and convert energy to strike the west coast of the British Isles. We can actually forecast the wave resource over periods of about 5-6 days. That's very significant to the electricity utilities who want to market the electricity. We can go from meteorological information